Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping out of the bright, sterile light of day and straight into the shadows. We're going to be exploring a truly grim, gothic fable of individuation. You know, that messy, psychological journey where we confront the parts of ourselves we desperately try to repress. This is the kingdom of the honest guest and the ugliest man. And look, it isn't just a story. It's a profound exploration of our own primal unconscious, heavily layered with Nietzschean philosophy, and honestly some truly fascinating philological roots. So let's get into it.
The struggle for truth is a descent into the primal unconscious. That really sets the stage here. We're following a figure known as the Ugliest Man, and he's acting as our lone wanderer, this rugged archetype of the honest guest. He's not looking upward towards some pristine artificial heaven. No, he's descending deep into the literal and psychological dirt of reality. Together, we're going to use philological archaeology to dig through the layers of language and myth to find ultimate truth right alongside him.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand our wanderer's journey, we have to look at the two extremes of his world. On one side, we have the clockwork sovereign. This represents the artificial heights, right? An iron tower built entirely on gears of perfect data. But then, on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, deep in the dark depths, we find the truth-telling monster. This represents the chaotic, raw, organic reality of a roaring banquet, driven by the literal growling of the belly. It's the ultimate clash between sterile data and raw, unpolished life.
Let's look a bit closer at that first extreme. So the clockwork sovereign, described in the texts as a Faustbuch Übermensch, opens his massive iron tower to our wanderer, the ugliest man. The sovereign is desperately seeking an honest guest, but he makes a fatal error. He tries to map his guest using sterile, flawless metrics. He wants a reality that can just be neatly categorized by perfect data. And in doing so, he inadvertently sparks what's called a digital decay of the human spirit.
But think about how that encounter actually plays out. Our guest, the ugliest man, isn't made of data. He has blood. He feels pain. He represents the messy, unpredictable pulse of being. And when this organic reality meets the sovereign's iron limbs literally seize up. He realizes he can't even touch the earth, let alone his guest, without crushing the very life he's trying to host. Because he's completely devoid of the anima, the soul, the sovereign is reduced to nothing more than the most expensive clock in an empty room, hosting only an optimized eternity of nothingness. Just hollow.
Now, as our wanderer descends further, the world splits into these striking contrasts. Down one path, we meet the Wille Nar, the fool. He's dancing on a muddy riverbank, embodying this joyous, buoyant, psychic openness. He actually invites the ugliest man into his empty bellows. And this emptiness isn't a void. It's a space that allows the wind of life to flow. But on the other path, we encounter the Pale Inquisitor. Now, the Inquisitor tracks the wanderer with a razor-sharp quill and just cold, calculating logic, obsessively searching for the ultimate hidden stain. He's hoping to carve rigid laws into his skin to achieve perfect purity. This whole setup brilliantly illustrates the absolute folly of societal duty and sterile logic. When the ugliest man asks the fool for a monument to his sorrow made out of the discarded marble blocks of societal duty, the fool just laughs at him. He calls those heavy scholars and their monuments gravestones carried by the living. So while the heavy scholars sink under the waves of change, the fool remains buoyant. Meanwhile, the Inquisitor looks into a mirror held up by the ugliest man and is paralyzed by his own hollow sockets. The Inquisitor's cold search for life's stain leaves him with a life that had never truly been lived at all. As our wanderer continues his descent, he arrives at the edge of a plague-ridden village. And this brings us to a super fascinating piece of philological archaeology, the root word las. It literally means to loosen. Here, the wanderer meets the Pale Redeemer, who offers him a vial of pink syrup. The philological root of this false redemption is meant to loosen the guest from his tragedy, to offer him a hazy, blissful numbness. It's psychic dissociation, designed so he only looks at the sky and completely forgets his earthly hunger. But listen to how the wanderer responds. He outright rejects this sugar-coated well. He chooses to remain burdened by the feeling of his own tragedy. And honestly, he proves his title as the true honest guest right here. Instead of drinking that pink syrup of dissociation, he fiercely prefers the rotting corpses of absolute truth over the plastered, numb smiles of the falsely redeemed. He demands to feel the full weight of reality, no matter how grim it gets. Which brings us to a massive psychological pivot. You really have to ask yourself, can the silhouette be separated from the substance? Can you actually have the bright heights of a castle without the dark, muddy depths of its dungeon? With this question echoing in his mind, our wanderer leaves the surface world entirely and plunges straight into the cavernous, dungeon-like depths of the king.
Down there in the dark, the king finally finds the ugliest man and recognizes him as his underground twin, his shadow. The king, who is completely obsessed with his own brilliant light, tries to slay this creature. But as he strikes the shadow, the king feels the blade pierce his very own chest. It's a stunning realization. Sovereignty and dirt are proportional. The king and his shadow are an inseparable foundational unity. Basically, the higher the palace climbs, the deeper its foundations must plunge into the dirt.
And this descent into the foundational dirt leads us to our final destination, along with another brilliant philological clue. Down in these depths, the wanderer meets the truth-telling monster. And remember, the root of monster is monstrum, which translates to omen. This monster smashes through the stained glass of the cathedral, inviting the ugliest man to a banquet of sacred bread. The terrified high priests scream at this omen, but the monster roars back that this creature, this ugliest man, is the exact truth they have kept hidden under the floorboards all along. So, why is the ugliest man the ultimate honest guest? It's because he has the courage to display his hunger on the outside. The wild, cold wind of reality is howling through the sterile church. Together, the monster and the wanderer are mocking the silk robes and the Latin chants that are so desperately used to hide the primal, human growling of the belly. It's the ultimate breaking of sterile dogmas, totally shattering the illusion that we're somehow above our own nature.
All right, let's pull all of this together. This entire journey is a map of individuation. Think about the false hosts we've seen, the sovereign, the inquisitor, and the redeemer. They tried to mask reality with data, laws, and numbness. But our lone wanderer successfully descended past all of those false metrics. He encountered the true host, the Willinar, the king, and the monster, who forced him to embrace breath, dirt, and hunger. And that is what true individuation looks like, integrating the darkest, rawest parts of our primal unconscious.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to end this explainer. What marble blocks of societal duty and sugar-coated wells are hiding your own primal truth? Where in your life are you acting like the clockwork sovereign, trying to map your messy reality with perfect data? I highly urge you to reflect on your own psychological reality. Embrace the dirt, find your shadow, and please, don't be afraid of the growling of your own belly. Thanks for stepping into the shadows with me. I really hope this descent leaves you hungry to learn more.